This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Norris Group Real Estate Radio Show and Podcast. I am not Bruce Norris. This is Joey Romero, and today we have a very special guest, Brent Lee. Brent Lee is the managing broker and co-owner of Windermere Real Estate. Brent is a seasoned Riverside real estate broker and business owner with a passion for education. His specialties as a realtor include residential property, investment property, short sales and REOs, and income properties. Brent is an advocate for his clients, agents, and more than 40,000 students of the Riverside Unified School District. He's a problem solver, a lifelong learner, and a listener willing to tackle any issue, any size, with a cool and calm approach. I've been a witness to all that. As a real estate broker and co-owner of Windermere Real Estate, Brent knows that education is the foundation for a good quality of life for all residents. He believes in strong educational foundation can be the nexus for stronger neighborhoods, economic development, and greater prosperity for the region. He has lived in Riverside all of his life and a proud graduate from all the Riverside Unified School District schools. Brent was elected to the RUSD Board of Education in 2013. He's currently the board president and up for re-election this year. That must be fun. Brent earned his BA in Economics and International Relations with a minor in Espanol, Spanish, from the University of San Diego, and a master's degree in management from the Anderson School of Management at UC Riverside. Outside of real estate and his duties as an elected trustee at RUSD, he spends much of his time adventuring with his attorney turned entrepreneur wife, Anna, and his three uniquely extraordinary kids. And I kind of chuckled because they really are. If you know them, they truly are. Henry, hashtag Dapper Henry. Felix, hashtag Felix the Fro. And Amelia B, hashtag Amelia Bedelia. And if you want to see some great Halloween costumes, I suggest going on Instagram and checking out those hashtags because they go all out and they're my favorite thing to see every year when they do so. My favorite, I think, still is the Royal Tannenbaums. So Brent, welcome.
Wow, thanks, Joey. Appreciate that.
So, hey, how did you get started?
Well, when I finished college, I really was not quite sure what direction I wanted to go in. The only thing I was sure of was I did not want to get into real estate. My family, or my mom in particular, was in real estate since I was a kid, and that was not something I wanted to do. But I think life had other plans for me, and I ended up coming back from San Diego after graduating from college. My mom needed help at the office running property management. So that was my first taste of what real estate was like as a career as a 23-year-old kid fresh out of college.
What year was that so people can get an idea of when you entered?
That was 2003.
Oh, so it was about to get crazy.
Almost 20 years ago.
And it was about to get real
little
crazy.
Little did I know what was I get myself into.
If you didn't get into real estate, what was Brent Lee's dream at that point?
I really thought I was going to work for the government in some fashion. I was interested in potentially pursuing a career in the Navy, maybe working for one of the intelligence agencies. And it was like shortly after 9/11, the world was a different place. And that was something that was really intriguing to me, especially with my background in international relations and economics. I thought it'd be a good fit for me. But like all plans, you got to be ready to change. So I'm glad for the path that I've taken, and I think it all worked out for the best for me and my family.
So how soon, early on, how soon were you selling homes?
I committed to do that property management job for a year, but it only took me about 30 days to learn property management was not my calling. I'm somebody that really likes to not only show my value, but have that value reciprocated and feel appreciated. And property management is not the career for that, right? You're always the in between the landlord and the tenant. even the best landlords, want to save as much money as possible. Even the best tenants still want things, working a certain way. So trying to satisfy the tenants' needs while satisfying the landlord's needs and make a happy medium there was a constant tug of war. And it was just not my personality.
Okay. So take us to your first sale.
Well, thank goodness for family. They're the ones that'll trust you first, right? So my wife's aunt, Aunt B, she knew me since I was in high school. My wife and I have known each other since we were juniors in high school, so we were kind of already family. And so she trusted me. She had an income property that she bought, years before in Riverside. She lived in LA in Montebello, actually, and she was ready. She was tired of being a landlord too. And so that she gave me my first shot at listing a property, which I'm forever grateful for. And not only for that, but she was just a special person in our family's life, and that's actually who my daughter's named after. That's the B in Amelia B. So that was my first sale. Of course, I learned a lot. I made lots of mistakes, but she let me learn through that experience. And also being in a family business, I had my mom there to lean on and to help me through and to get that experience so that I could grow in this career field.
Did you think that you were actually going to stay in real estate for a long time, or you thought, well, I'll do this, I'll give it a shot and see where it goes? Or were you like, you know what, I'm hooked, I love it?
I was hooked pretty early on. Even while I was doing the property management, I saw what some of the other agents in our office were doing to help buyers and sellers, and that was super appealing to me. I like the flexibility of the career. I like that there was an opportunity. The more you put into it, the more success you could have, and that's kind of how I'm wired. I like that. If I put more into it, I get more out of it from the income side. So seeing that in the property management, I knew this was something I was going to like. And from that first opportunity, that first listing, that first closing, I was pretty much hooked.
Now, you came in right before this craziness, where, everybody was selling homes, and 2 and 3 times, it seemed like people were refining and selling homes like crazy, in 2004, 5, and 6, before, all the stuff hit the fan. Can you talk about, and you remember anything in particular about that time frame?
I do. It was a crash course in, just the volatility of the industry that we find ourselves in, and how, especially on the residential side, for the traditional home buyer, traditional home seller, how emotions are so closely tied to a transaction, and that it's not just about dollar and cents, but a lot of other X factors. So I think experiencing that, the fuel of the market as it continued to grow. And people just trying to get in on the action, whether it was to try to make a buck or to try to own a piece of California real estate. It was fast paced and high emotions, and really exciting and stressful all at the same time.
Now you've been a property management, an agent. Fast forward us to what your duties are now. Like, what are you doing as far as being the co-owner and broker? Like, what are your duties?
So yes, at Windermere Tower Properties, as the managing broker, I oversee about 50 realtors in our office, and a relatively small support staff for those agents. So overseeing and supporting agents with education. I think that's something that's first and foremost. We want to make sure that we're providing good education to our agents so they can best serve their clients, keep themselves and their clients out of trouble, and able to make good decisions. Compliance. So it's a real estate has a lot of changes in terms of legalities and disclosures and forms and contracts, and just making sure that we're staying in compliance with that. So my role here is to oversee that. Obviously the budget and the finance, making sure that we can stay in business. We've been in business for 30 years, and I want us to be in business 30 years from now. So making good decisions from the business side. And then I do also I still sell. I love selling. I love people. I love the relationships that I'm able to make in this business. So I like to help buyers and sellers. I'm fortunate now to work with my sister in this business as well. So she's allowed me. We've worked together now for about 7 years on the sales side. So she's really supportive in our business of helping buyers and sellers. So that allows me more flexibility to help support our agents in the office, along with the other leadership team that helps in that role too.
And I know your mom was an integral part of, you getting into the business and staying in the business. But outside of your family, did you have a mentor professionally?
Yeah, I think probably a little bit later in my career, for the last 10 years or so, there's a gentleman named Michael Fanning. He's based in Seattle, and he works for Windermere Services. So we're a franchisee of Windermere. And he when I initially met him, he was in charge of kind of the education role. And we're one of the few Windermere offices in California. So we kind of felt like we were on an island. For the first few years, we were part of this franchise. And it wasn't until really I connected with him that I felt a real connection to the brand that we associate ourselves with, and what it means to be a coach and a leader for agents. Up until then, I really only knew what it was like to either help in my community or help my clients with their real estate goals. So he helped teach me a lot about what it meant to be a leader of agents, and how to be effective in that role and help others reach their goals with their clients. So I'm really grateful for the relationship and the mentorship that Michael has provided to me, not only professionally, but personally. He's a dad too. He's only about 10 years older than me. But to see how he's balanced his work life with his life as a dad and his 2 kids, is something that I've always admired. Something that has always stuck in my mind that he said, and now I kind of use my own version with my kids. He says every day he dropped his kids off at school, he would tell them, be awesome and help somebody. And that always stuck in my mind. So every time I drop off my kids at school, always tell them, do good, be good. So that's kind of my own version of what he's kind of inspired me to do professionally and personally. So I always look to that with my agents and my kids. And we always say, right, if you do good, you will be good, right? So they're kind of one and the same. But I like the order, and I think the order that you say them in is pretty important too.
You said something there that you felt like you were on an island. Now, both in your career and for your residence, were you purposeful in staying in Riverside?
100%. I'd say initially, probably, again, when I was in college, all I wanted to do was get out of Riverside, right? I needed a break. But I think you don't know what you have until you don't have it anymore. And as I kind of grew up a little bit and matured, I think through college, as a beautiful and wonderful place that San Diego was or is, it wasn't home, right? It wasn't where my roots were. It wasn't where some of my relationships were. It wasn't familial or familiar. So it was important to me and to my wife to get back to where we were, our roots were, and to raise a family, grow our business, and give back to the community that helped us, achieve the success that we've had so far in our lives.
Now, as we were talking before we actually started the radio show, Aaron was always a big proponent of realtors. He wanted to give them as much value as we did to our real estate investing clients. And can you talk about, one of the things he always talked about was be an expert where you are. Don't if you live in Riverside, just because you get an opportunity to sell in Bakersfield doesn't mean you really should. Right. So can you talk about being a local expert?
Sure. Real estate is definitely local, right? And I think you can even have a niche within a city like Riverside, right? Because I think you have these diverse neighborhoods with diverse features and amenities that are unique just within a city. And then you magnify that across cities or counties or regions. And really, I think a realtor's value is in their market expertise and their local knowledge. So yeah, I always admired Aaron for recognizing the value that a realtor can have to their clients. And he was, I think, probably better than most realtors at how to articulate that value. But I think that, well, a realtor can sell anywhere. If you're licensed in California, you can sell anywhere. What kind of differentiates, a good realtor from a great realtor is to be able to demonstrate their local knowledge and their expertise, and be able to share that with their clients, so that their clients, especially on the buy side, can make good decisions. And then on the sell side too, is articulating what makes that particular home in that particular neighborhood with those particular features, a niche, a desired asset that they can't get anywhere else, and helping articulate that value to help their clients get the most out of their house when they sell.
Well, one of the things that you guys used to do is place UCR professors, right?
Yeah, so a big part, and thanks to relationships that my mom built early on in her career and continued to foster throughout her career, was connecting with local businesses and organizations with their recruitment efforts. Right, I think one thing we've always battled in the Inland Empire is brain drain. I think that's vastly improved since I was a kid, but we wanted to help do our part in battling the brain drain. We knew what a great community Riverside was, what a great region the Inland Empire was, but we didn't always tell our story really well as a region, or we allow other people to tell our story for us. So what we found that worked really well with these relationships, with whether it was UCR, California Baptist University, or Riverside Medical Clinic, or Riverside Community Hospital, was going to their HR departments and saying, hey, let us help you with your recruitment of professionals. We know that you are a great employer and you're going to provide a great salary and benefits to whether it's the professor or the doctor or whoever that you're recruiting. But it takes a professional and a personal decision to make a commitment to relocate. So let us handle that personal side and be able to satisfy any concerns or answer any questions that family might have about neighborhoods, safety, schools, restaurants, entertainment, enrichment outside the school. Let us take them around and sell Riverside so that it makes them say yes to that job so much more easier.
And that doesn't happen unless you are that local, expert.
Right.
So now I'm going to segue into the community. When I was in insurance, I used to sell insurance, and my mentors would always say, go join the chamber, go do the Hispanic chamber, do all that. And those were great, but I always felt that it was just like, it lacked a little something. It didn't tug at my interests. I still went to all those, but I really, my heart wasn't in it. It wasn't until I met Karen Roberts. She was the executive director, the old executive director for Habitat for Humanity. She pointed me one time and she says, she was I think she was Austrian, right? And she, yeah. So I would always say,
great. She's a great lady.
Yeah, Karen Roberts. She would say, Joey, you got to go to this big group. There's a new thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of tapped out with, joining groups and things like that. And it wasn't until actually I started kind of doing that I stopped joining things or associations for gain. And it kind of flipped, and you know what? I'm just going to get involved because it's the right thing to do. So when I joined the PIC group and I got involved with the PIC group and in the community, I was just like, what value can I bring to the community? Not because I'm going to get something out of it. For me personally, it was because I'm going to show my young family that it's important to give back to your community. Nothing else. It's not easy. It's always, you say it's easy to join a cause or to get behind something when there's a tragedy or there's something that happens to you and your family. I didn't want to wait for that. I wanted to show my kids, hey, it's the thing to do, to give back while you can. And so that's one of the things that I did. Can you talk about why it was important to you and your family to get involved and get engaged in the city of Riverside where you work?
Sure. And I mean, that's something that's really important to me and my family. And I was fortunate, just growing up to see that modeled with my mom and dad. So to me, that was just normal, right? So I was fortunate. I know not everybody has that experience, but that was just normal. That's just what you did, right? If you if you were going to be part of this community, you needed to give something back, right? So I knew that from a very, very young age. And one of the first things I did when I came back to Riverside and started working for my family business was I joined the International Relations Council, which is kind of the group that connects the sister cities of Riverside to the community, right? And that was important to me because in high school, I was a beneficiary of that organization's generosity. And I was able to do a sister city trip to Sendai, Japan. So I was grateful for that experience. That was my first big international trip, opened my eyes up to, the world and to traveling. And I was forever and still am grateful for that organization. So when there was an opportunity to sit on that board as a 23-year-old kid, still essentially, I jumped at it. And, I really didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I wanted to help. And if they offered the opportunity, I wasn't going to say no. And I think that kind of was the beginnings of my desire to continue to give back and build relationships. And what I've learned from that experience is really say yes to the things that are important to you, right? There's so many good causes and so many important organizations that you can give your time, your treasure, your relationships to. But I think to be really effective, and this is something I think that Aaron probably taught us both, is you got to know when to say yes and you got to know when to say no. So as I've matured and kind of learned what my strengths are and what my passions are, I try to say yes to those opportunities that I think I can be effective and where it doesn't feel like work. And I think you mentioned the PIG group, right? I think that is a group that probably has changed my life more than any other organization, professionally or personally.
What is the PIG group? Can you describe what it is?
Yeah, so the PIG group is a young professionals group in Riverside that was started back in, I don't know, what was it now, 2008? 2008,
nine official.
2008, 2009, with the intention of trying to create a nexus of young professionals to come together, support one another to, connect socially, develop professionally, and engage civically in Riverside. And we felt that, if we could come together, we could be more effective in supporting one another to achieve those three objectives. And through that group, it's given me the opportunity to develop some of my greatest relationships. Some of my best friends to this day are all a result of participating in that group. And it also was a safe space to grow myself as a leader. If it wasn't for the PIG group, I don't think I would have had the skill set, however limited those skills were, or the confidence to run for the Board of Education. There's no way I could have done it with that network of young people to kind of push me and encourage me to make myself vulnerable and run for public office, right, at the local level.
Yeah, especially in the early years of the PIG group, I remember we were on fire.
Yeah.
We were just
we had a fire in our bellies, that's for sure.
I joined as part of the civic involvement committee, and that was headed up by Jen O'Farrell and your wife Anna, and we were just I think I remember the board telling us to calm down because we were making the other two branches of the PIG group seemed like they weren't doing as much, but we were we didn't care. That first year where we took on homelessness, and we really did. That's actually the first time I ever met you. I don't know if you remember, but it was in the scavenger hunt. We did a scavenger hunt for help where we drove all around Riverside and picked up backpacks, picked up jackets, things that we could donate to the shelter here in Riverside. And so that was a really fun event, which kind of killed two birds with one stone. We did all this great work for the civic involvement committee, but then we also got together at the end of the day at Romano's and had some good food and hung out. And I just remember you and Matt Shea just kind of hanging out, just kind of keeping to yourselves. Not, we weren't everybody, kind of all friends yet, but that was
Right.
the start of it. And as I got more involved with the PIC group myself, I ended up, running the board development training program and getting on the PIC board. And that's where I really saw you, in action. And one of my favorite things and I've told you this before, one of the favorite things that you always said, you always had the dissenting vote. and it was always not necessarily that you didn't agree with it, but you always, wanted to point out, like, you wanted to be the devil's advocate, that you didn't want it to just seem like, yeah, whatever it is that the committee puts out, everybody's just going to sign off on. We really have to examine, if it's truly, fulfilling our mission. Can we involve everybody? Is this something that is truly for everybody at the PIC group, or not, or just, the 3 or 4 or 5 of us that really thought it up, so that was one of the
You say
things
that now, but I'm sure you and everybody in the room just thought I was a jerk. And I probably was back then. And I think that's what I said, like, that's where it was a safe space to grow personally and professionally, right? I think I learned so much from those experiences, and I look back and I'm like, gosh, why was I such a jerk at some of those meetings? But it was just because I was learning, right? I was trying to learn what it was like to work with other like-minded young professionals who aspired to do more for their community and grow in their careers, but not really knowing how to do that because we were so young, right? I was 20, in my late 20s at that point. So I mean, I'm just really grateful for you and just that whole group that was we kind of all grew up together, right? We grew up professionally together because we encouraged each other. And I think, I know there's other groups in town that are like that, but I wish there was even more, because I think if we had those kinds of opportunities to come together and talk about tough things and feel safe without being judged. I mean, I just can't imagine what the ceiling would be for our region.
Well,
if more people were able to do that.
There's a couple of things that came out of the PIC group. One that I'm really particularly proud of is the board development training program, which is actually the brainchild of Anna. I think she went through the Reardon program in LA, and she was like, why can't we bring that to Riverside and the PIC group? And it's a class that, would teach young professionals how to effectively serve on boards, because as we were starting to make a name for ourselves, people were asking for us. But did we know how to serve on boards, or did we just have Tuesdays open?
Right.
So that's what, the board development training program was intended to fulfill, that need, and really give you the skill set to look at a budget, to know how to market for nonprofits, to know what board governance is, Robert's Rules of Order, all that stuff is stuff that we learned there. And I think I made probably, along with, the PIC group in general, but the board development training program, I think my closest friends out of the PIC group came out of that. And I know I was part of the first graduating group. And that's, you actually went through that too, and even though you were on the board already, you were kind of a seasoned, veteran, you still went through it. And can you talk about your experience with the board development training program?
Yeah, and I think thank you, Joy, for helping lead that program for as long as you did. I think that's a good legacy for you and for the organization. And I think PIC Group's grateful for your involvement and all those who helped support that program and continue to support that program. And you're right, like that was something that my wife felt on it was very important to her. It was I think it was a way for young people to establish value with the generation just above us. We wanted to find a way to be at the decision-making table, but we didn't have a big check to write, right? We couldn't just write a check and say, okay, we did our part to be on the board. We had to provide value some other way. So I think the board development training program was that gift to the community for those that chose to participate in it. And I liked it also because it was a connection. It was our gift back to those that were maybe a generation or two out of the PIC group demographic, so that they could also participate and see what the PIC group was all about, but then use this value add that we were bringing to help serve on other capacities in the community. So that Reardon program, I think Matt Shea actually, through his experience, had learned of it, and then Anna and him, got together and tried to modify it to what it is, what it was for Riverside, and then I'm sure it's evolved from there.
Yeah, it's still going. I mean, this is
still going, still going.
Like 13th year, I think.
Yep.
And I'd be remiss if I don't mention Gordon Bournes, who's been so generous with that program. And every couple of years, we ask him for a donation, and he only does it for the Board Development Training Program. He doesn't support PIC in general, but it's almost become a passion for us, and he shows up for our graduations. He's involved, so it's really cool, and that's part of that connection that we have. I mean, I have Gordon Bourne's cell phone on my phone because of this.
Yep.
And so that's a really cool part of what we've done. And from this program, there's been CEOs of nonprofits that have come out of this, several presidents of boards. I was the president of the board of the Riverside Area Rape Crisis Center for 2 years. I served 6 years on that board because of the board development training program. So there's been some really cool things.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under California DRE License 012-19911, Florida Mortgage Lender License 1577, and NMLS License 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the Hard Money tab.